Come join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Good to see you all here. Yeah. How's everybody? Everyone's always so serious. I mean, the mask could have something to do with it too, because you don't really know what's going on underneath there, but what's going on? Yeah, it's a funny thing, especially like for those who are new, or there's always this like, especially if you're new, there's always this like seriousness thing that goes on. And one thing I love about Buddhist teaching, specifically Zen teachers, is the laughter and the joking, and just the finding humor in all of the craziness. Because what else is there to do, you know? We can either drive ourselves crazy at all the craziness, or we can try to laugh at it and do what we can to make a difference and keep ourselves happy and healthy. But, you know, being so serious all the time cannot always be the best thing. Not that the blank look on faces necessarily means seriousness, but, you know, I always laugh at, like, if we took this exact crowd right here and we dropped this in like a restaurant on like Park Boulevard right now, would everybody be like this? So we almost like kind of absorb this idea of what we think we're supposed to be like in a certain place. If you go to a restaurant, bar type situation, then there's this, everyone has to be talking and loud and all these kinds of things. You come to a place like this and everybody has to be like super quiet. And neither one of them are right or wrong. It's just always fascinated me how we just kind of adapt to wherever we are. But so that's all I got. Yeah. Anyone here for the first time? What brings you here? Stuff. Oh, that's a lot to unpack.
I know it's been a minute. I usually go to the Shambhala Center. But
Well,
tonight felt good.
welcome here.
Thank you.
And all of your stuff. When we started 15 years ago, we said we just wanted to create a place where people could bring all of their madness and craziness and just learn to be with it exactly how they are and exactly who they are, and just sit with their stuff. Because that's what we got, you know, a lot of stuff. So, have you studied much of Trungpa's teachings?
Just a
little bit.
Yeah,
He's
it's just this year.
brilliant. His teachings are incredible. So Chogyam Trungpa is a great Tibetan Buddhist teacher. Built Shambhala in like the 60s out in Colorado, and did lots of crazy, wild, definitely unhealthy things. But his teachings were just some of the best I've ever read, seen. There's a YouTube video, it's called Drive Up Dharma, where people are like driving through outside and he's sitting in Shambhala. It's Colorado in the 60s. So you can imagine what that was like. First time, what brings you here?
A friend told me to check it out, and so I like people, and here I am.
Right on. Liking people is a good thing. I know a lot of people don't like people. So
Work on it.
yes. What else? There's a whole, I think, crew back there. First time, what brings you here? Addiction. Yeah. I hear you. What else? Same.
And, yeah, just experiencing new alternative ways of recovery.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Yeah, it's interesting because when you battle addiction, drugs, alcohol, whatever it may be, some addictions definitely more serious than others. Really, the Buddhist teachings cuts into cravings and desires. That's the heart of this practice, is becoming aware of what we crave and what we desire. Because our cravings, our desires lead to, as the Buddha taught, suffering, discomfort, angst. So it's opportunities to begin to look at what are we craving and why. And whether the addiction is drugs, alcohol, Netflix, whatever that addiction is that we have, it's good to pay attention to it. I'm not an addict. I've worked in that environment for 25 years, so I don't say this lightly, but we're all addicted to something in some way. Like I said, some are just a lot more severe and life-threatening than others. But I think for all of us, it's good to explore what are we addicted to? Could be ourselves, our ego, our clothes, our shoes, heroin, anywhere in between. So it's important to understand what you're addicted to and how attached you are to yourself and how to cut through some of that craving and desire. Less we crave, less we desire, more at peace we can be. So sounds so simple, right? So with that, we'll start with the meditation practice. Welcome to those online, our millions of YouTube followers. Thank you for being with us. Feel free. Hey, Brad, welcome from Scottsdale. Feel free to chime in and introduce yourselves online. There's a chat box somewhere. So meditation practice, a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit and breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. This practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture. You want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Allows the back to straighten. Same thing if you're in a chair or bench, just sitting up straight, relaxing the shoulders. Hands are on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Return attention, focus to the breath. . letting go of expectation, letting go of judgment from the practice, just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. Most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your days. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful. Whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people might think it is, especially those who are new to practice. There might be this idea that, my life's a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, so I'm going to escape to meditation and make everything better. Meditation is direct perception into the present moment and being with the present moment as it is, not running from it. Meditation doesn't fix all the craziness, all the madness, all the stuff in our lives. It makes us look at it clearly, honestly, and allows us to be with everything. Sometimes the present moment is incredibly beautiful and joyful and pleasant. And other times the present moment just completely sucks. And our entire life is that range of experiences. So this is the Buddha's teachings on equanimity, learning to be with life as it arises. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, which is where we spend so much of our time, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, pondering your whole life, why this happened, why they did that to me. Spend so much time trying to figure out everyone else and everything else. And the beauty, yet also difficult part of this practice is about looking at your mind, adjusting your thoughts, your words, and your actions to life around us. And that's when things begin to change. We begin to take control of how we act. And that can change things pretty drastically. I mean, it's a lot easier to blame everybody else for all the problems in our lives, to point fingers and wish they hadn't done certain things. And often that finger gets pointed at ourselves, pointing the finger at ourselves, wishing we hadn't done certain things. But regardless, here you are. And we cannot change anything that's gone on in the past, as much as we'd like to. And yet we spend so much time focused on it. How many of you in this room would love to change something that you did in the past? If every hand is not up, then, you don't literally have to put your hands up. And how many of you have been able to change anything that happened in the past? But we spend so much time there. And I'm convinced if I spend the next 2.5 years trying to figure out something that happened in the past, I'll be able to change it. It's a story we have to set down. Look at the past when we need to motivate us, inspire us, make changes as necessary. But most people I know who end up at places like this, myself included, probably don't want to spend too much time thinking about everything you've done in the past. It usually doesn't end you up in a good mental space. And when you don't feel mentally and emotionally solid and strong, then we don't usually do too many wonderful things. So take care of yourself in the present moment as best you can. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's not a business. It's a practice and a way of life. And it can be a pleasant one if we choose to. And the beauty of the Buddhist teachings is it's not about Buddhist teachings at all. It's about you. And the teachings are really just an opportunity to look in a mirror and reflect back on our thoughts, our words, and our actions. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I really just prefer to open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with, and we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening, and I'll respond to whatever's on your mind. So questions. And same thing virtually. Welcome. Good to see you all. Feel free to chime in there's a chat box there. So if you have questions, feel free to put them there, and I'll do my best to respond as well. So questions. Yeah.
I have a question about the singing bowl.
Okay.
Is that how you refer to it, or?
Depends what you're talking about.
All right. Last week it was a hat, so you never know.
I was going to go there, but I'll let you finish. Go right ahead.
So I'm super sensitive to vibrations.
Okay.
And when you ding that, it runs through my body and I feel it and wakes me up.
Okay.
How, I know in many other cultures, sound, bells, gongs are used in different practices and rituals. How is the bowl or hat used in this practice?
You make me want to do the hat again, but I won't, because I don't want to ruin it for everybody else when I do it again 2 months from now. So the question, in Buddhist tradition, history, religious practice, just like every other religion, there are rituals. And as much as I'm going to deviate a little bit and then come back to that, but I just want to say this first for those who might be newer to this stuff. So I had to this afternoon, we had a group from Grossmont College. Professor brought them here, and they're all religious studies students. So they brought them here. And so a lot of kind of comparative religious studies questions came up. And I want to start with this because it'll maybe tie into the bowl a little bit. A lot of people come into Buddhism later on in life, meaning most of the people who end up here and interested in Buddhism didn't grow up Buddhist. You know, we're Christian or we're Catholic, we're Muslim, we're Jewish, we're pagan, or lack thereof. And all these religions have thousands of years of history of ritual and culture and tradition that's, carried on. And those rituals and traditions change a little bit. Buddhism is the same thing, right? A lot of people enter Buddhism because maybe they're anti-religion, or they didn't like their upbringing in a certain religious setting. So they're like, well, screw that. I'm going to go check out that Buddhist stuff because it's not a religion. I hate to shatter all your beliefs, but Buddhism is a 2,500-year-old religion. There's no God with regards to Buddhist practice. Buddha didn't want you to believe in him, right? He died 2,500 years ago. He can't help you. But if you go to a Thai temple, like from Thailand, if you go to a Taiwanese temple, if you go to Japanese temple, if you go to Taiwan today and you go up to them and you say, this isn't a religion, this is a philosophy, it's kind of insulting to them. It would be like walking into a Catholic church and saying this isn't religion. Now, the flip side to all of this is, I've been doing this place for 15 years and the people who come here are not Buddhist. We're not trying to make you Buddhist and you don't leave Buddhist. But it's a way of life. So it's a beautiful religious practice for those who practice it that way. And for most people who come into it later, it's a philosophy and a way of life. The Buddha was just a dude, just some person who figured out why he suffered and he wanted other people to suffer less. Okay? So with that, you have religious practice, which includes what they call Dharma instruments. Right? And so in the tradition I come from, which is a Taiwanese Zen, or Chan in Chinese, Zen is Japanese, and mix of Pure Land Buddhist practice, the Dharma instrument there, and in many of the traditions is, they call wooden fish, which is the drum and the bell. And so they strike the bell and they strike the wooden fish. These are used as ritual objects. They're used to chant with. They're used to begin formal ritual practice. Often the 3 strikings of the bell is reference to the triple gem, taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, as we did. So they're used as ritual objects. They're not used in Buddhism for everything you just said, which doesn't matter. Ultimately, what matters is if the sound resonates with you, then beautiful. If you hate the sound, then don't listen to them. What I'm getting at is what Buddhists' view on certain things is irrelevant. Your name is Carlos. Carlos likes the sound of the bell. Then, I mean, this was a gift. I can't give you this one. I almost gave you this one. But then get a bell and hit it. Right? One of my favorite Zen teachings is when hungry, eat, when tired, sleep. If you like the bell, hit the bell. So, yeah. Lots of people are into sound healing, sound therapy. We had Damien Rose here for 10 years. You know, we haven't, since the pandemic, we haven't restarted that because we just are not into packing this place really yet. But he would come once a month and do a singing bowl meditation. And he'd sit up here with 8 or 10 Tibetan singing bowls and he'd play them and everybody felt exactly what you just described. You know, so each person has a relationship with stuff differently. Yeah.
Sign me up, I'll be here.
I'll let you know. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Other thoughts, questions? Yes.
Hello again.
Hello again.
Good seeing you.
You too.
I'd like to check in with you from time to time.
I'm still here, man. As long as I'm alive and breathing, I'll be here.
Thank you. I'm still here too. Last time I was here, we talked about this equanimity I experienced in the sanctuary.
Yeah.
And the challenge was, how can I experience that outside?
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk to you today about what I've been doing the last couple of months.
Sure.
I've been experiencing it, trying to practice breathing, being mindful, aligning my actions and my values, and finding that it's working for me. I don't consider myself mean, but I can be petty, and I still am. But here's the difference: I'm noticing when I'm being petty.
Yeah.
And, I'm not harsh with myself either. I laugh at myself when I am. I'm trying to correct that next time. So thank you very much for all you did.
For sure.
If you just speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. And I appreciate you sharing that. You know, to somewhat paraphrase for those virtually, just sharing about how, you know, the practice of equanimity. Now, you shared recently that, you know, here, I'm using my words now, but, you know, it's a lot easier here. As I started at the beginning when I sat down, that, you know, everyone here is quiet, everyone's on their kind of best behavior. You know, nobody's sitting here like throwing things, breaking things, you know, making a mess, right? Everybody's just kind of like quiet. But that's not like that out there. So what you shared is that you're noticing more so out there when you do things that maybe would typically take you out of kind of a pleasant mindset and emotional space. And I think that's, again, it's actually exactly something I talked about earlier today, but someone asked, you know, they were interested in meditation and Buddhism, and they said, how do I start? I looked at them and I said, you just did, right? And what I mean by that is starting isn't even so much about being here or Buddhism or meditation. It's about recognizing that there are ways that we are outside of here that we want to change. And let me give you this, for example. Anyone ever told you this is something you should do? Anyone ever told you you should do something?
Me?
Whoever, I don't know. I was looking, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel when someone comes up to you and says, you should do this?
You know, I can't make an answer because I know so much about the idea that there's no shoulds or whatever, even though I actually think there are some things that a person should do.
Boy, did I pick the wrong person to ask that question. Yeah. But when we're in our ego
Mhm.
and someone tells us you should do something, very often we don't like that.
We might say F you.
We might say F you. That was the answer I was hoping for.
Yeah.
Thank you for playing along, right? So we don't often like when people tell us that we should do something, right? We love them, we know them, we care about them, we know what's best for them. You should do this. It doesn't usually resonate so well with us. We have to kind of wake up to wanting to make changes in our lives on our own. And so where this starts is recognizing out there, where am I unpleasant? Where am I angry? Where am I sad? Where am I depressed? What's going on that is causing these emotions to arise in me? That's where practice begins. Because to come here, week in and week out, or anywhere you go to learn this stuff, and to hear people talk about loving kindness and compassion and joy and equanimity and all these, Buddhist phrases and teachings that you can pick up in every Pema Chodron and every Dalai Lama book, but only be with it when you're reading it, or only be with it when you're sitting here. What good does that do you? I mean, I guess, yes, we say plant seeds, so it does a tiny bit of good. But the real part is, do you notice out there when you're not doing okay? That's where it begins. And then you have to apply. Well, I take that back. You don't have to do anything. I suggest you then apply all those things that you've just read about being kind and compassionate to yourself and everybody else into your life when you notice that that's not what's occurring. So, yeah, the awareness outside of here is really important. Yeah.
When you speak of ego
Mm.
and our quest, I guess I would say, to check that, understand that, yield that. I'm wondering how that, and if you could speak on, plays into Buddhist ideologies around having the yearning and the need to seek forgiveness for our actions externally, while maybe simultaneously and or not seeking forgiveness of ourselves.
Yes. So, ego, forgiveness from others and for ourselves. That kind of where you're going with that? Yeah. I repeat it for those on YouTube that can't hear questions. So you said that much more eloquently than I did, but I just wanted to, put it in a nutshell. So the first thing about ego, I think let's start there, is to recognize that, often, especially in kind of this like new age world of spirituality, you hear these things like kill the ego, destroy the ego, ego death. Your ego's not going anywhere, man. Trying to kill your ego is like the most arrogant, egotistical thing you could do, right? How can you kill your ego? Like that is your ego, right? Now, the flip side, just to completely confuse you, let me start with this. Buddhist teachings very clearly teaches that there is no self. Does that clarify everything for you? There is no self. Now, that teaching of non-self, what it means is, in my attempt with my ego and myself to answer that, is that we exist in this physical body, that we have consciousness, and that we will go through our days and we will do a bunch of things. And in that experience, we constantly feed a story into our head about who we think we are. Non-self doesn't mean we don't exist. It just means that we exist completely differently from how we perceive ourselves to be. And that we are changing in every moment. Do you know 5 people in your life?
Sure.
Would they all say different things about you?
I would think so.
Right? Some of them right, some of them wrong, some of them truthful, some of them untruthful. But I tend to look at people's views of us as a good example of non-self, because these are just people telling you things about you, or defining you or describing you. Those things aren't you. Those are just their perceptions of you. Well, it's the same thing when we apply that to ourselves, right? We are giving ourselves labels and judgments and critiques based on all the terrible things we've done in the past. And we think that's our self. And in that self that we think is so real, we think there's an ego that is also real. Now, the forgiveness piece, which hopefully may also help explain the ego part, is to understand that we all do things that harm people. We all do things that harm ourselves. It's just how we operate. We also do things that help people, and we do things that are good and healthy for ourselves. It's constant. The danger is when the ego grabs on to things we've done in the past, and that's the only story we're telling ourselves. You ever sat around all day telling yourself wonderful things about yourself? Never. Can you repeat that? Never. What's your name? Sorry. Eric. Have you ever done anything good in your life? You have. At least one thing, right? Maybe two? Possibly three, right? So what I'd like you to do when you leave here tonight is to maybe take 5 minutes and just think about those 3 good things that you did in your life. You might even surprise yourself and come up with 4 or 5. But the reality is, this ego that we're so often attached to defining and labeling and judging can serve us really well if we use it appropriately. Buddha teaches that craving and desire lead to suffering. But he also said that there's healthy cravings and healthy desires. If you all didn't want to suffer less, you wouldn't have the craving or desire to even be here right now. So wanting to suffer less is a healthy craving, a healthy desire. The desire and craving in and of itself is not what's bad. It's the intention behind it. That's what we have to look at. The reason I went kind of back and forth, ego forgiveness, talking about the good things is part of forgiveness is understanding that every person has done their best that they could in that moment. Because that's all they could do. If people could have been kinder and gentler, they would have been. And it's easy for us to judge and say, no, they could have been. Clearly not at that moment, or they would have been. Forgiveness towards self and others is critical, even though there is no self or others to forgive. If we don't forgive ourselves and others, our ego gets wrapped up in our head and we hate ourselves. And we turn to things to escape from that. Spend more time thinking about the positive things you've done in your life, because they're there. I don't know if I answered your question at all, but I at least hope something I said was helpful. Yeah. The last thing I'll say on that is, for me as a practitioner, my God, we'd be here for 6 weeks if I talked about all the things I've done wrong in the past. Just short of murdering somebody, I've done just about everything wrong you probably could have done. And I had to forgive myself. And that forgiveness doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it good. And it doesn't mean other people haven't suffered terribly. But if I continue to hate myself for what I've done, then I'm going to live in a world that hates himself and will do things from that view. And that view is not fun. Does that make sense? Yeah. So not easy stuff. And I wish you could just hear this once and be like, boom, perfect. Got it. Done. Thank you. But you're going to walk out these doors and that mind that's been torturing you for so long is going to be there. and you have to recommit to this stuff. By this stuff, I mean meditation, staying clean, staying sober, finding communities that are healthy for you. You have to commit to that stuff every single day, over and over and over again, So, yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment that I think from Travis got a sheet about forgiveness meditation.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really good practice.
Forgiveness.
It's like I forgive myself for not understanding. I forgive myself for anyone that I've hurt.
Definitely.
I just
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, there are forgiveness meditations out there. Travis, who leads Thursday night, did he just do one last week or?
Well, I got the sheet a while ago.
Okay, yeah.
But maybe he'll do one again soon.
Yeah,
They're
for
great.
sure. Yeah. So. Other thoughts? There was a comment here. Let me address briefly. Brad said, Jeff, I thought Thich Nhat Hanh said Buddhism is not a religion. Let me just address that briefly. Thich Nhat Hanh is a genius. There's the Vietnamese Zen monk recently passed away, built Deer Park, Plum Village in France. One of the most beautiful, enlightened humans that this world will ever know. And their big approach in saying that Buddhism is not a religion, in my opinion, was because he really wanted Westerners to engage in Buddhism. And if people sat down day in and day out who were sharing Buddhist teachings and said, this is religion, this is religion, this is religion, this is religion, none of you would be here. Well, I shouldn't say none of you, but, most people come into Buddhism later in life, as I said earlier, are not looking for religion. They're looking for some sort of spiritual practice. They're looking for a community to fit in. They're looking to be loved and cared for and feel like being themselves is enough. And they're looking for just to be kinder, gentler people and get through their days without wanting to jump off a cliff. That's what most people I find somewhere along those lines are looking for with this stuff. And the reason that I say, Brad, Buddhism is a religion is, it is to millions and millions of people for over 2,000 years. So Thich Nhat Hanh's upayik, which is skillful means, is beautiful of helping people understand that technically it's not a religion because there's no belief in a higher power or things like that. But again, to tell millions of Buddhists all over the world that their thing is not a religion, it's not really true. To them, it's religious practice. It has a lot of faith. It has devout rituals. They're religious practices that are very deeply ingrained in many cultures within Buddhism. This just doesn't happen to be one of them, Western culture. So, not that I want to argue with the late, incredible Thich Nhat Hanh. I just wanted to explain why I say that. So, other questions? Yeah.
Do you have a method, do you have a method for eradicating self-doubt? And like sometimes we go through experiences, like you said, if you knew better, you'd do better. And so part of your experiences is adding forgiveness, but also adding trust. And if we could just find a way to eradicate that like doubt, then we would never question our actions. Then we would just live freely.
Would that be nice? That sounds so great. Now, yeah, page 72 will help you eradicate all doubt. Let me just to clarify, I can't even retell what you just said, but it was great. Are you talking about eradicate doubt in yourself or others or both?
In your actions. Yeah, trusting, that your way, your path is the way. It's the only way. It's almost saying like there's like a fate, a special design. Like it was always destined to be that way. Just trust it and go with it.
Yeah, but I mean, again, I can only speak from my personal experience. I wouldn't have trusted my way.
Yeah, it can always be improved, it seems. So.
No, it had to be improved, or I wouldn't be sitting here right now. Right. So that's what I'm trying to clarify. Like, I want to address, and I'll close with this kind of thought and topic. I want to address like doubt, because I think that's a really beautiful thing to address. But then what threw me off at the end was when you said, trust in your way. Trust in your way can be really dangerous if your way is unhealthy and toxic.
So what if you were always destined to be a Buddhist teacher?
But
Like,
what's-
what you went through.
But what's throwing me off is this destined thing, right? Buddhist practice isn't about like destiny. It's not about like everything is planned out. Buddhist practice is not God has a plan for you, to use that expression loosely that in Western culture we probably have all heard. This isn't that, right? Nobody had a plan for me. I made choices every single moment that created where I ended up. I could make a choice 5 minutes from now that would drastically change my path. So we're all on a path, but that path is based on the choices we make. I use this example a lot, but there was an old series, at least when I was a kid, called Choose Your Own Adventure books. You ever heard of those?
Awesome.
Right? You know what I'm talking about? So that's, to me, that's our path. Our path is that we're going to read 12 pages, and then it's going to say, if you want to go there, turn to page 17. If you want to go there, turn to page 20. And you're going to pick a page to turn to. And then you're going to start reading that page. You're like, oh, that was the wrong choice. And we're going to go back to page 12. But you can't say that again? You can't do that in real life. So what I'm hearing you say is kind of, what's confusing me is you're saying like that there's some destined path.
I would prefer to trust in my choices every step of the way.
I would prefer to trust in your choices or my choices as well, unless my choices are harmful.
Sometimes they are, and then you find out when you get there.
Yeah, that's not the practice. So it's one thing to have like Buddhist teachings very specifically. My master used to always say, and the Buddhist teachings very specifically, let me start with this, are do not believe this just because I'm saying it. That's what he was teaching. He said, try it. Put it into practice. If it works for you, stick with it. If it doesn't, abandon it. But the question is, if what works for you? If your Buddhist practice and what you're doing, if what you're doing works for you, meaning it contributes to a tremendous amount of greed and anger and hatred and rage and gets you a bunch of crap and hurts a bunch of people, that's not the path you want to go on if you're interested in this practice. This path is very clear on doing things that bring love and kindness and compassion to ourselves and the world around us. So it's very easy for me to say, well, I'm just going to do stupid things and that's part of my journey. Yes, I did lots of stupid things and that was part of my journey. But then at some point in time, the practice is to say, I want to stop doing that. Not just I'm going to keep doing it. Because if you keep doing the stupid things as part of your journey, you're going to continue to suffer. If you stop doing the stupid things, you're going to suffer less. So the choices are all yours. There is no destiny. There's just the law, it's karma. The law of cause and effect. And every choice, every thought, every word, every action creates your world. It is super dangerous for someone like me to sit here and do these types of things. Because people actually listen. And so people who do this stuff need to be very careful. They don't get on these kind of like guru complexes and, think that they know any more than anybody here. Those of us who lead were unenlightened, ignorant fools taking our understanding of Buddhist teachings and hoping that you will see if you think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds, and you put others at least equal to you, then your life and the life of those around you can change. But at some point we have to be, and I'm just rambling, this isn't meant as like attacking you. At some point in time, this practice is about calling ourselves out, honestly, and saying, yeah, I should probably stop doing that. 10 years ago, I was arguing with a friend of mine about something. It wasn't even too personal, it was just about something outside of us. And he said, I said, that's just how I am. And he said, well, maybe you should change how you are. And he was right. Meaning I shouldn't just keep doing the same dumb thing and saying, well, that's how I am. That's my journey. My journey is to be greedy, angry, and ignorant, and you all just have to live with it. That sucks. Because that's what most of us have been doing for a long time. That's what leads us to stuff like this. Unless you were just bored and had nothing else to do on a Tuesday night, So, doubt, question everything. Question the Buddhist teachings, question the practice, put it into your life, see if it works. And if it doesn't, abandon it. But I would be cautious. I can just say this for myself. I don't trust acting on what my thoughts are at all. At all. I have to work really diligently every single day at not doing what I'm thinking. I'm not even kidding you. It is so hard to not do things I think that I would like to do. That's why I started a temple. I needed to be in a safe space, surround myself with community. And oh, by the way, I guess apparently other people did also. So I don't trust myself. I trust the practice. Myself would do stupid, greedy, angry, ignorant things. And again, that self I'm referring to is just the story of the self that I've always told myself. Now, if I could drop all of that, that would be great. But since I can't, I'm definitely not going to trust that self. So, with that clarity, I'm going to close. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gain be transferred to the more than 6 million lives that have been lost during this pandemic and their family and friends who continue to suffer to this day. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So a few quick announcements before you head out. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this space 15 years ago, 10 years downtown, and then 5 years here to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and hopefully make sense of it to those who show up. So just about every night we have different practices going on, different people leading from a different Buddhist tradition. We have a pretty large recovery sangha that currently meets here twice a week, Sunday morning, 10 a.m. here, Tuesday night downstairs, but that's a smaller group and does require an RSVP, so a lot of you end up just getting filtered into here because we don't want to pack 50 people in a small space downstairs. So family sangha that meets once a month, so for parents or toddlers, teens, kids. We have a college group at San Diego State, so there's always something going on. Appreciate you being here, and thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks,
Thank you. Oh, JD, I see your, and we're done here, but just to comment on that, as far as your comment around Vajrayana, don't worship the Buddha as a god. None of Buddhist practice or teaching is about worshiping the Buddha as a god. And yes, he was very clear. He was just a human. He didn't want people to worship him at all. So thanks for adding that, JD, if you even heard that. Have a good night, all.
Oh, that's right. That's how I did this. Did you get it?